Captain Jules Arlen sat in the pilot's chair of his aging freighter, the Sunspot Jackal, sipping lukewarm coffee and listening to the faint hum of space beyond the hull, when the ship's alert system gave a low beep, not loud, but steady, a pulse meant to signal something out of the ordinary. At his feet, Max, his loyal genetically enhanced canine, lifted his head with a quiet growl and stood, ears turning toward the sound. Jules reached forward and tapped the blinking icon on the panel, expecting junk code or an old warning satellite drifting in the void. But what came through was far from ordinary. It was a distress signal, old Threnari frequency, encrypted but weak, fractured across layers of static as if it had been bouncing through debris fields for weeks. He narrowed his eyes as the message came into focus, repeating in broken phrases. Help, Princess, alone. Escape pod failed, planet surface. Please, anyone. The voice was young, shaky, frightened, and clearly alien, but it wasn't a trap. He could feel it. Max gave a short bark, as if agreeing. Jules ran a spectral trace and located the origin point Raven 4, a class-red toxic world buried in the outer spiral of the galactic border zone, a planet he remembered from an old cartographic survey decades ago. Poison air, violent storms, abandoned mining domes, and dead satellites, but no settlements, no reason for anyone to be there anymore. He tapped into the news feeds, pulling up the latest on Threnari politics, and the picture grew clearer. A month ago, the royal palace of Threnari Prime had been attacked during a bloodless coup. The queen and her family declared missing, presumed dead. A new regime had taken control, and with it came a strict ban on royal loyalists. Jules stared at the screen, watching official ambassadors spin peace while backdoor channels buzzed with rumors of assassinations and purges. The distress call matched the timing a child escaped during the chaos, sent away in a hidden vessel, never reported found. Now she was calling out into silence. Jules reached out to the galactic network, placing a relay inquiry to nearby stations, hoping someone else had heard it, but the responses were cold. Most ignored him. Others told him plainly. Interference in Threnari affairs could spark diplomatic conflict. The message was unofficial, unverified, unwelcomed. And slowly, one by one, those who had access to the signal turned away. Jules sat back in his chair, frowning, feeling the old tug in his chest, the one he hadn't felt since he left the Earth fleet. He looked down at Max, whose glowing blue eyes locked with his tail still, posture straight. Jules grunted. Well? Boy, looks like it's just us again. Max gave a low huff and trotted toward the ship's cargo deck, as if already preparing for launch. Within the hour, the Sunspot Jackal disengaged from its drifting port station and jumped into FTL, its destination marked with a yellow warning. Hostile environment, no legal jurisdiction, no support. But Jules didn't hesitate. The old ship rattled as it broke out of the warp above Raven 4, its surface spinning below like a sea of storm-choked steel, swirling gray clouds cutting across cracked landmasses and half-sunken mining towers. The moment they reached orbit, alarms blared. Auto-defense systems locked on them from the planet's equator. A security drone, old model but still armed, broke from a ruined station's orbit and shot toward them, energy cannons powering up. Why would there still be active defenses? Jules muttered, slamming a series of override keys and diving the ship lower into atmosphere. Max barked, claws braced against the deck, and internal dampeners groaned as the freighter tilted hard. To the left, narrowly dodging the first bolt. The screen lit up red as the drone gave chase, spitting plasma rounds across the upper wing. Jules cursed under his breath and dropped altitude fast, slicing through a break in the clouds and hugging the jagged terrain below. The drone followed, relentless, and something in its movements felt less like a patrol and more like a guardian. It's protecting something, Jules said aloud, sweat on his brow, as another blast grazed the hull. Max barked twice, tail stiff, and Jules pulled. Up schematics. The signal trace led to an old terraforming outpost in the northern wastelands, long thought collapsed. But that's where the beacon came from, and now it made sense. Someone had rigged the site's defense grid to keep everyone away. That meant the princess, if still alive, wasn't just hiding, she was being protected. By what? Or by whom? He didn't yet know. But someone had made sure she wouldn't be taken easily. The drone circled back for another strike as the freighters. Hull sizzled from heat, and the atmosphere's toxic winds clawed at its aging vents. Jules flipped a manual switch and triggered a flare burst, then another, confusing the drone's sensors just long enough to dive behind a mountain ridge and descend toward a landing zone. The ship hit hard, skidding across black rock, sparks flying from its side. The engines whined, then went silent. Dust choked the air. Jules reached for his helmet and opened the side ramp. Max stood ready beside him, scanning the wind with his sensors, nose twitching as if already picking up movement. Jules stepped out onto the wasteland with his rifle slung across his back, visor shielding him from the acidic wind, and looked. Ahead at the crumbling outpost. The signal was stronger now, close, very close. But so was something else, something watching. The silence broke with a mechanical whir. Overhead, the drone hadn't given up. It had followed them down now, hovering above the cliffs, scanning, arming. Jules grabbed his communicator and shouted, "Max, smoke screen." The dog's implants lit up, and a dense cloud of white vapor burst from his collar, masking them instantly. As the drone descended, ready to finish the job, Jules raised his weapon and muttered, "Let's find that kid before they do." Storm above Raven 4 rolled like boiling smoke across a sky choked in gray, casting long shadows over the ruined wastelands as Jules and Max began their slow, careful trek away from the battered hull of the Sunspot Jackal. The ship had landed rough manual thrusters, just barely slowing their descent after the drone attack, but she was still intact. For now, Jules checked the scanners clipped to his wrist, but the interference from the planet's atmosphere made most readings unreliable. Max moved ahead, his enhanced senses sharp, nose close to the ground, every muscle taut. The dog's head tilted slightly every few steps, ears flicking toward faint sounds beyond Jules' range scratches of wind, a distant crack of old metal shifting, and something else. The soft, uneven movement of something alive. The land. Around them was dry and broken. The once glittering outpost, now nothing more than skeletal towers, and half-buried shelters drowned in ash. As they moved deeper, the air grew heavier, laced with faint chemical traces that made Jules tighten the seals on his helmet. Every few meters they found signs of the past wreckage from a medical drop pod, shattered comm devices, and burn marks in the soil. But more disturbing were the footprints. Not just theirs, but others, older ones, leading toward the outpost and then turning back. Someone had come before others who had received the signal, maybe smugglers or bounty hunters, but for whatever reason, they had left. Either they couldn't find her, or worse, they had and still chose to abandon her. Jules studied a scorched datapad half buried under a rock, its logs still intact enough to read. Vital signs weak, no resources for extraction. Local risk. Unacceptable, he grimaced. They had found her and walked away. Max suddenly stopped, body low, tail still, eyes locked on a rusted hatch just beyond a collapsed wall. Jules followed his gaze and approached slowly, hand on the grip of his rifle. As he neared, he saw it movement, just a flicker, something pulling back into the darkness. He raised a hand, palm open, and said calmly, "It's all right. We're not here to hurt you." Silence. Then, from inside the hatch, A small face appeared, pale blue skin streaked with grime, wide violet eyes glowing faintly even in the low light, and long silver hair matted to her cheeks. She looked no older than 10 by human standards, but her gaze held something older, something afraid and exhausted. She didn't speak. Instead, she clutched something tightly in her hands, a thin metallic badge, cracked down the middle, bearing the royal sigil of the Threnari line. Jules didn't move closer. Max sat down gently, his posture non-threatening, head tilted. The girl's eyes flicked to the dog, and slowly, the fear in them shifted to curiosity. She stepped forward hesitantly, bare feet crunching ash, and knelt. Aside Max, the dog didn't flinch. Instead, he nudged her hand gently with his nose. She touched his fur, then whispered, "You're real." Her voice was fragile, like paper in the wind. Jules exhaled softly. "You must be Alari." She nodded. Jules crouched to her level. "We're here for you. We're not leaving you behind." She looked at him, searching his face for lies, for anything that would prove he was like the others. But when she found none, her shoulders slumped with relief, and she stepped into the light. Her royal crest was cracked, her clothes torn, and her limbs thin from weeks of survival, but she stood with quiet dignity, still holding the emblem of her house like it mattered more than anything else. Jules reached into his pack, offering her clean water and a thermal wrap. "We need to get off this planet, and fast. Do you know if there's anything else guarding this place?" Alari shook her head. "Just the drone. And the Watchers?" "In the sky." Jules frowned. "Watchers?" She pointed upward. "They scan every day. I hide when I hear them. But they're getting closer." Jules opened his wrist scanner again, boosting signal range, and sure enough, he picked up. Faint pings, distant but deliberate, circling the atmosphere. Rebel Threnari warships. They were back, and they were hunting. Not for debris, not for tech, for her. If they found out the signal had been answered, they would descend without hesitation to finish the bloodline and erase the last piece of the old rule. Jules looked at Max. "We have to move." But Max didn't look back. He was still staring at the ridge behind them, body frozen, nose high. Then he growled a deep, low rumble that made the air seem colder. Jules spun and scanned the ridge with his scope. At first, he saw nothing but rocks and broken girders. Then something moved, just a shift in the way the ash rolled down the slope, too controlled to be wind. A shape crouched low behind cover. Too tall for Threnari, cloaked in desert-colored plating, holding something long and sharp. Someone had followed them down, and they weren't friendly. Jules raised his rifle slowly, pulling Alari close behind him. Max advanced a step, protective, growling louder now. The silent wasteland had become a trap. The princess had been found, but now the real danger was just beginning. The silence shattered in an instant as the bounty hunter emerged from the rocks with precise speed. A shadow in desert armor built for one purpose: kill clean, fast, and without mercy. His voice, modulated through a filter, was cold and certain as he raised his rifle at Jules and said, "Step away from the girl? No need to die today unless you insist." Jules didn't hesitate. He pulled Alari behind a broken support beam and fired back, the plasma bolt grazing the hunter's shoulder, but doing little to slow him down. The hunter returned fire, and Jules felt a searing pain slice across his left side, knocking him back as his body hit the dirt hard. Max launched forward with a deep growl, moving faster than any normal dog could, his eyes glowing blue, as panels along his sides slid open to reveal hidden defense mechanism shock emitters, a retractable claw mesh, and reinforced armor that clicked into place as he ran. He slammed into the hunter before another shot could be fired, teeth and metal tearing into armor, as the two rolled through the ash in a blur of violence. "Run!" Jules shouted, holding his bleeding side as Alari hesitated, eyes wide with fear. Down into the ruins now. She obeyed, guiding Jules toward a cracked stone stairwell, half buried in the rocks, an old hatch, leading into the underground remnants of a forgotten alien facility he'd glimpsed once long ago in an exploration. Report. They descended fast, the sounds of Max and the hunter still battling above, as Jules stumbled with each step, blood staining the filter pack on his side. The ruins below were dim and cold, full of strange glyphs that pulsed faintly as Alari passed, her presence triggering dormant systems that hadn't flickered in centuries. Lights hummed awake, dust lifted into the air, and ancient metal doors slid open without touch. Jules dropped to his knees behind one of them, gritting his teeth as he tried to stop the bleeding. "We need to seal this place," he gasped. "Find something, anything that works." Alari didn't respond at first. She was staring at a glowing panel in the center of the chamber, an octagonal column with tendrils of light, reaching toward her like it was recognizing something inside. Her. Slowly, she stepped forward, pressing her palm against the core. It lit up brighter, and then a voice echoed from within the walls, soft and mechanical. Biometric signature accepted. Royal key recognized. Vault protocols initializing. Jules blinked through the pain. Vault? Alari turned to him, her voice shaking. "It's true. My mother told me stories, but I thought they were just tales for children. Long ago, before the wars, our bloodline guarded more than the throne. We held access to a hidden network, a star map of ancient Threnari colonies, full of technology lost to time. The vaults were scattered and locked away with biotech codes, each passed down through the royal family. I have one inside me." Jules tried to process that, but the pain pulled him back. "So that's why the rebels want you gone. Not just the throne. They're afraid of what you might unlock." Alari nodded. "If I survive, the truth survives, and they want it all buried." She helped him sit against the wall, wrapping a bandage around his wound with shaky hands. The sound of a low growl returned from the stairwell, followed by the familiar heavy footsteps of Max. He limped into the chamber, fur matted with dust and blood, one eye lens cracked but still glowing. He dropped a broken weapon piece from his mouth, the unmistakable metal edge of the bounty hunter's armor. Jules smiled weakly. "Good boy." Max walked over and rested beside him, panting slowly but alert. The hunter was defeated, but Jules knew better than to think they were safe yet. They sent one. They'll send more. Alari helped Jules onto a nearby bench as the walls began shifting around them, revealing deep corridors lined with strange symbols and soft white lights. The vault was opening. Jules watched as the walls split apart and a projection lit up the space above, a map of the stars, but not like any chart he had seen. These stars were marked with ancient coordinates, symbols from before even Threnari spaceflight. Dotted among them were locations labeled with a single glowing icon: vaults. This could change everything," Jules whispered. "If Earth or anyone loyal to the old ways sees this, they'd know the rebels erased more than just royalty. They destroyed history." Alari touched one of the glowing stars, and the map responded, expanding the view into a detailed scan of a long-lost world with technology readings far beyond current standards. Jules exhaled slowly, overwhelmed by the scale. But before he could speak again, a new sound hummed through the room, a deep vibration, not from the vault, but from outside. Max's ears perked up. Alari stepped back as the map flickered. The floor vibrated slightly, and then the voice returned, this time with urgency. "Warning. External scans detected. Atmospheric breach in 200 seconds. Cloaked vessels detected overhead." Jules' heart sank. The rebels were above them again, And this time they weren't sending a single bounty hunter. They were coming in force. The vault had responded to Alari, awakening something ancient and powerful. And now, everyone wanted to shut it down. He struggled to his feet, supported by Max on one side and Alari on the other. We hold here. We don't run again. If this vault is waking up, we're not going to let them bury it. The lights above them glowed brighter, systems activating, doors sealing behind them like the vault was preparing for a siege. The star map shifted again, narrowing in on a specific signal deep beneath the floor. A second voice lower, older spoke. Final seal unlocking. Core access granted to heir of the old blood. Stand by. Jules looked at Alari, who stood straighter now, no longer afraid, her eyes locked on the light. What happens next? He asked. She didn't turn to him. Now we find out why they were so afraid of what I carry. And beneath their feet, the vault began to move. The alien vault trembled softly as it came to life, light spilling from the ceiling in soft golden beams, illuminating long dormant machinery that stretched across the chamber like veins glowing beneath ancient stone. Symbols in unknown languages flickered to life on the walls, and vast star maps unfolded above the group, slowly rotating, each point representing lost worlds, hidden systems, and ancient routes that had vanished from galactic charts centuries ago. Jules stared in awe, blood still drying around his bandages, while Max stood firm at Alari's side, eyes glowing faintly, as if even his enhanced senses were trying to process what they were seeing. Alari stepped forward slowly, drawn toward the center pedestal where a pulsing orb hovered, surrounded by rings of light that shifted as she approached. With each step she took, a vault responded, revealing more. Files of long-forgotten Threnari history, ancient records of peaceful empires, alliances older than the rebellion itself. Alari's voice trembled not with fear, but realization. They erased everything. My family wasn't just royalty. We were guardians of this knowledge. This vault holds the truth about the stars, about where we came from and what we lost. Jules nodded, his fingers already moving to activate his old communication pad. He worked quickly, bypassing interference, sending out a scrambled signal directly to an old Earthfleet friend who still owed him favors. "This is Captain Jules Arlen," he whispered into the mic. "We found something on Raven 4. A vault older than the rebellion. The girl is real, and what she carries. The rebels aren't just after her. They're after what she can awaken. We'll hold out as long as we can. Send help if you can." The signal went out in fragments, but it was enough. He tucked the device away and looked at Alari, who was still staring at the stars above her, eyes wide, shoulders stronger now. She didn't look like the frightened girl from the pod anymore. "They'll be here soon," Jules said quietly. "We can still try to move you. We've got the ship powered. There's a way out." But Alari shook her head. "No, I've run far enough. If I run again, they'll just destroy this place. They'll erase the truth." Jules sighed, not because he disagreed, but because he knew what staying meant. Max looked at him, then at Alari, and quietly settled beside her. Jules knew then that no order would make Max leave her now. The dog had chosen. "All right," Jules said. "Then we make them earn every inch." They spent the next few hours preparing. Jules rigged traps using old vault energy lines, charging conduits that could be overloaded to send shock pulses through the upper corridors. Alari found defensive controls. Ancient, yes, but powerful, meant not to kill, but to hold ground, to defend knowledge. Jules modified their ship's external panels, connecting the power feeds from the vault to reinforce its shields. Max patrolled the perimeter, scanning every corner, his sensors alert for the first sign of trouble. As night fell, or what passed for night on this ash-covered planet, they rested in silence under the soft glow of the vault's heart. Alari sat beside Max, resting her hand on his fur, whispering words in her language that Jules couldn't understand, but felt were old, maybe prayers, maybe stories. Jules kept watch, half listening to the hum of machines and distant thunder above. Then the moment came. The ground shook gently, nothing from the vault, but from above. Scanners lit up. Ships had breached atmosphere. Multiple vessels, some small, others large, moving in a tight net toward the vault's coordinates. Jules stood, weapon ready. Max growled. Alari stepped forward, the crest on her chest now glowing with the same golden hue as the vault. The ceiling cracked open slightly, revealing an embedded eye core and orb of light surrounded by curved plates. That slowly unfolded as the vault systems fully awoke. The AI spoke in a clear, serene voice, one that echoed through the entire chamber. Heir of the Starline recognized. Vault defenses unlocking. Full system access granted. Jules looked at Alari. What does that mean? The AI answered for her. All weapons, shields, and data archives are now under control of Royal Heir Alari of House Solenthren. Warning. Activating full protocols will reveal the heir's presence to all major tracking systems in the galactic web. Proceeding will. Place target at risk from hostile factions across 12 sectors. Alari stood still for a long moment and slowly nodded. Proceed. The vault pulsed with light, and the map above their heads flared bright, then split, sending fragments of star data shooting through relay channels hidden in deep space, far beyond the planet's atmosphere. A shockwave burst from the vault's core, invisible but far-reaching, like a flare sent into the heart of the galaxy. Max barked once, stepping between Alari and the now glowing pedestal. Jules watched the entrance as the first echoes of movement came down the passage. The rebels had arrived, and now they knew exactly who was inside. The AI's final words echoed across the vault. Target profile now visible to all listening powers. Prepare for confrontation. The galaxy is watching. Inside the glowing chamber of the ancient vault, where stars hovered above like silent witnesses, Jules stood with one hand on his side, the bandages barely holding, and looked at Alari with steady eyes that held no command-only respect. The choice is yours, he said softly. You can hide again. We'll help, or you can stand tall and let them see the truth. Not because you're royalty, but because you're the last one left with the courage to speak it. Alari didn't answer. Right away. She looked at Max, who sat beside her like a guardian carved from stone and steel, one ear twitching, his tail still but his presence steady, always watching. She touched his fur, eyes glancing up at the swirling stars above, and then stepped forward toward the core of the vault. The AI recognized her at once, lighting the entire room in a soft golden glow. Broadcast system ready, it announced. Begin planetary transmission? Alari placed both hands on the interface, her voice stronger than before. Yes. A pulse of energy shot upward through the atmosphere, passing through layers of clouds and ash, breaking through the static fields that had once hidden this place from the galaxy. The signal was clear, undeniable. Across space, satellites and listening stations picked it up. The Threnari crest reappeared across countless star feeds, and then her face no longer a frightened child, but a calm, determined young air-filled screens from trade ships to galactic embassies. Her voice rang out, carried by every signal the vault could reach. My name is Alari of House Solenthren. I am alive. The rebellion that claimed peace has built its foundation on lies. They erased our history. But the truth remains herein. This vault and within me, I will not hide any more. On a quiet deck far from the central worlds, a young human technician stared at the broadcast and whispered, She's real. And on the bridge of an Earthfleet command vessel, the emergency beacon from Captain Jules Arlen finally matched coordinates with the transmission, and they jumped without delay. The rebel ships circling Raven 4 scrambled to act, but too late. Earth's fleet arrived first small, but proud and fast, driven not by politics, but by loyalty to one of their own. They entered the atmosphere in tight formation, surrounding the planet like a shield. The rebel forces hesitated, then scattered, unable to face the growing wave of support now building behind Alari. Word spread fast. Neutral planets began asking questions. Old allies reopened communications. The rebellion's narrative cracked like glass under pressure. Within days, under Earth's protection, Alari was escorted to the Galactic Assembly, a place she had once only read about, now walking through its halls with Jules beside her, his coat stained but shoulders squared, and Max padding along quietly, eyes alert under the carved stone archways of the old chambers. She took the central platform and faced 100 different species, most skeptical, some hopeful, and a few openly hostile. But she didn't flinch. Her voice was clear. I am not here to demand power. I am here to remind you of what was lost, and who helped me survive. Not warriors, not fleets, but a human captain who had nothing to gain. And a dog who never left my side, the assembly murmured. Some looked at Jules, who stood quietly in the background, one hand resting on Max's back. Earth's ambassador stepped forward proudly. The girl lives because we chose not to turn away, and we stand with her still. After hours of debate, the vote came. Earth was granted permanent diplomatic ties with the Threnari system, something they'd been denied for decades. And Max, by unanimous vote, was named the first non-human Galactic Guardian from Earth, a symbol of loyalty beyond borders. In the weeks that followed, peace talks began. Old truths were revealed. The vaults were studied, slowly and carefully, under Alari's guidance. But one evening, long after the speeches and handshakes, Jules stood on the ramp of his patched-up ship, readying for another quiet departure, when he heard soft footsteps behind him. Alari stood there, dressed not in royal robes, but a pilot's jacket too big for her frame, holding a small travel bag and smiling with a tired but honest grin. Permission to come aboard, Captain? Jules raised an eyebrow. Back so soon? I thought princesses had planets to rebuild. She stepped closer, Max already at her side again, tail wagging. Next time, you're riding co-pilot, she said. Jules chuckled, glancing down at Max. Only if he approves. Max gave a low bark, as if to say the seat was already taken. The ramp closed behind them as the ship lifted gently into orbit once more, its engines humming a little brighter than before. And though the stars ahead were wide and wild, one truth had already been written across them. A little princess, once left to die on a forgotten world, had lived because a retired human and his loyal dog refused to turn away. And the galaxy would never forget the story they left behind.